Usually I'm not a huge orange fan, but I tried out a creamsicle inspired ganache and oh my gosh, it's amazing. So let me show you how I did it. I am using my pastry cream style ganache as a base. I have some white chocolate, I have cream, I have cornstarch, I have a little bit of sugar, and then I'm using orange juice concentrate like you buy in the freezer section of your grocery store, and some fresh orange zest. The concentrate I'm adding to part of the cream in the beginning of the recipe, along with some sugar and vanilla paste. You, of course, can use vanilla extract, though I really love the intensity of the paste and being able to also see the vanilla seeds in there. And then I'm adding the rest of the cream to the cornstarch, which of course is going to act as a thickening agent. I'm just going to give each of those a nice stir, and then I'm going to move over to my stove to create again a kind of pastry cream style mixture. I'm going to leave my fresh orange, the chocolate, and the butter just on my counter, and I'll come back to those later. What I'm going to do here, and primarily this is because of the addition of the cornstarch, I am going to warm up the orange juice concentrate, some of the cream, the sugar, the vanilla, until it is just kind of warm, starting to get hot, and pour that into the cornstarch and cream mixture. This is going to help temper in the cornstarch so you don't end up with a really lumpy and a weird ganache. So I'm just creating a little slurry over here, and then I'm going to combine everything back into my saucepan. Technically, you could just dump everything into the saucepan to start off with, but you're going to run the risk of having a clumpy and weird ganache. So I do not recommend just adding it all directly into your saucepan. Definitely tempering in part of the cream with cornstarch is going to lead to a smoother final result. I am going to whisk pretty constantly over pretty low heat here until this thickens up, and as soon as it does that, I'm just going to make sure that everything is fully thick and incorporated and take it off the heat pretty quickly. If you have never made a pastry cream before, this is how you make a pastry cream or a crème pâtissière, and what you're doing is you're just really activating that thickening agent of the cornstarch, and the sugar also really helps with this process. I get a lot of people saying, hey, why so much sugar? I promise you this ganache is not going to be too sweet, especially with the addition of the very acidic orange juice concentrate, adding in a little bit of sugar in addition to the creaminess from the cream, the butter, the white chocolate. And because the amount of white chocolate is actually quite low, I promise that that sugar is just going to help balance out all of those flavors, as well as help with this thickening process here while it's on the stove. So all of these ingredients are very intentional, and I do not think that this is an overly sweet ganache. If you personally want to play around with the ratio of all of these ingredients, go for it. I love it when people use recipes as a starting point for their own exploration and adventures in the kitchen. That is totally fine. You do whatever you want to, but this is how I like my recipe, both for the taste and for the texture in the end, and for my macaron filling. All right, as you can see here, it is just really going nice and slow, but starting to thicken up here. If I weren't stirring constantly, I would run the risk of curdling happening in the bottom if the heat is not really moving throughout the pan as evenly. And so then that could lead to a really weird texture, and overcooking part of this and undercooking another part. So it's really important to keep that whisk moving pretty consistently until it starts to thicken up, and it will thicken up quite quickly. You will go from this very thin, creamy, orange juicy kind of liquid to a really, really thick sort of pastry cream really quite quickly. Additionally, as you see right now, the color is it basically looks like orange juice, right? Especially since we took that orange juice concentrate and thinned it down with a bit of cream, and then we've got that cornstarch in there. It's making it a little bit more opaque. But we will be adding this to the white chocolate and adding in butter, so it's going to be a pretty light colored ganache. If you do want to add a colorant, a powder or a gel at this point, go for it. You can really easily color any ganache by adding that colorant into your cream, either at this point or even later as we're mixing this into the chocolate. And you could get a really intensely orange ganache as well. As you can see here, this is really starting to thicken up. I am just going to wait until I see a few bubbles here, make sure it has really reached that like boiling point, and then I'm going to take this off of the heat. And honestly, before I pour this over my white chocolate chips, I am going to just put my white chocolate in the microwave for about 30 seconds. I've been really liking partially melting the chocolate chips before I combine everything together. I just think it kind of helps with that transition of adding something really hot to something that might be a bit on the cool side. As you can see here, now that I've poured that pastry cream style mixture over my white chocolate, you can see all those vanilla bean seeds in there, which is just so lovely. I like to give this all a little bit of time to warm through before I give it a really good stir, and then I'm going to let it sit on my counter for about 15 to 20 minutes before going in there with my immersion blender to really emulsify this. This is one of those pastry recipes that you pretty much absolutely need to have an immersion blender. If you do not have an immersion blender, I have had a lot of people ask, can I use my food processor? Can I use my regular blender? You can try. I personally think that would incorporate too much air. But you know, if that's all you have, it is worth a try. You want to incorporate in the butter and really emulsify that in when this is warm but not hot, which is why I waited 15 to 20 minutes to let this cool to above room temperature. If it's too cold, it's going to be a bit hard to incorporate the butter in, but if it's too hot, the butter will kind of melt on contact and it will not create a really nice, smooth, silky ganache. It will create something that will likely separate into butter and the solids on the bottom. Now, after everything is incorporated, I'm going to add some fresh orange zest. I don't like to add this at the beginning. I really like to keep that fresh flavor as intact as I possibly can. If you add it in the beginning, I think there's a chance for it to just kind of disappear or even get a little bit bitter, which is why I add it at the end. I like to just keep my ganache in some plastic wrap here. I just pour it into a sheet pan just to make sure it doesn't go everywhere. And then I just leave it on my counter to let it cool completely. This will take a few hours. Usually I make my white chocolate ganaches the day before I want to use them, and then I just leave them on my counter overnight. Again, make sure you have plastic wrap on contact so a film or weird skin doesn't form on top of your ganache. If your ganache seems a little bit thin, just stick it in your refrigerator. I would recommend for 30 minutes to an hour. Any longer than that, and it's going to really start thicken up. Remember, there's a lot of white chocolate and butter in here, and when that gets cold, that gets pretty solid. I hope you really enjoyed this recipe. I thought it would be a great one to share at this time of year because of the color especially, and for anyone who's not a real fan of dark chocolate or candies for Halloween times. But honestly, you could use this recipe any time of the year. Let me know in the comments down below or tag me on Instagram at Maddie Brame if you give this a try. I can't wait to see what you come up with in your kitchen. All right, until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye.